What's going on, guys? Back working on the HEMI Swap Jeep Renegade, where, if you're not familiar, I'm trying to fit the drivetrain of a 5.7 liter HEMI powered Dodge Charger into a Jeep Renegade. Today we're wrapping up the work in the engine bay by spraying some color match bedliner. Sticking with the theme of using Dodge Charger parts with this build, we're also using Dodge's F8 green, which happens to be my favorite factory paint color. It's also the color I'll use to eventually respray the whole Renegade. But anyways, back to the bedliner itself. We're going with T-Rex Tintable Bedliner. This allows you to add your own base coat paint for a custom color match, beyond just the standard available black, white, red, whatever. You get the idea. So I guess we'll jump right into that. First, we'll start out with adding the color. Make sure it's thoroughly mixed before measuring out the required amount for each jug of bedliner. This particular spray requires 3 ounces of additional color. Yeah, here you can see I'm using just a large plastic syringe to get a little more accurate measurement. I knew if I was trying to pour the jug into that small cup, I was definitely going to make a mess and wouldn't be accurate at all. I also only had enough paint left in the can to mix up 4 of these jugs of sprayable bedliner. I definitely should have checked before I started, and of course I waited until the weekend and couldn't get any more paint. And once I get the 3 ounces of paint measured up, went ahead, set that down to the side, and got the bedliner pulled out. Went ahead, started mixing that up, and almost knocked my paint over. So I would suggest mixing up the bedliner first. I really shouldn't have been shaking it right there with an open cup of paint. Pretty not smart on my part, but you could see inside there, yeah, the Tintable Bedliner base itself is like an off-white color. I was kind of concerned when I first started mixing it that it was going to lighten up the color too much, but ended up not being an issue at all. So go ahead, pour the color in there, put the cap on, and shake it up. Directions call for a 2 to 3 minute shake. So after we got it all mixed up thoroughly, go ahead, pop the top off, take a look inside, and you can see it does look a little lighter than the paint that's sitting in the cup just to the side there. Ended up not being a concern at all, like I said, but at the beginning I was a little worried. Next up, we have to add the activator. This particular mix requires 8 ounces of activator to properly convert the liquid into a solid rubberized coating after it's sprayed. So go ahead, pop the top off the jug, and just pour it in. Alright, so once you get the activator poured in there, go ahead, screw the cap back on, and you're going to have to shake this thing. Directions call for 2 to 3 minutes of shaking. You definitely don't want any unmixed liquid in there, so don't skip on that. When you're done mixing it up, you're pretty much ready to spray. Go ahead, grab the spray gun attachment that came with the kit. You can see this one's previously used. I've used it a couple times before. Went ahead, put a regulator directly onto it. Makes for easier adjustment while you're spraying. And you can see here, watch out. It is kind of easy to cross-thread those bottles onto the spray gun. So just take your time, back it out if you need to. But, once it's on there, it's good to go. Now that we have the bedliner mixed up and attached to our spray gun, we're ready to head outside and start spraying. As you can see, I already have the engine bay prepped and ready to spray. And just like any other automotive painting, preparation is the most important step. So to get to this point, you're going to have to degrease everything. With it being an engine bay, super important. You're going to have a bunch of oils in there anyway, so clean everything. Then you're going to have to sand and scuff it. After everything's sanded up, you're going to have to degrease it again. After everything's degreased, sanded, and degreased again, you're going to want to tape everything off. This stuff is tenacious. It's going to stick wherever it wants, so definitely any type of overspray, anywhere you don't want this stuff at, tape it off. But once you have everything prepped up, you're ready to spray. I had my gun set at about 80 psi, which is, at the top end of their suggested range of 60 to 80 psi. But it really depends on whatever surface finish you're going for and how you're spraying. Depending on, distance from the panel, how fast you're moving. There's probably a lot of variables in there. I was happy with how it was turning out, so I just rolled with it. But I guess that's enough pointers for right now. We'll go ahead, sit back, and hit a time lapse. Ooh, so I'd call this pretty successful. Knocked out almost all of it. I did run out of base coat, so I couldn't mix up any more. So you can see right along in the transmission tunnel, didn't get any coverage, but I'll probably come back tomorrow. Paint store was closed over the weekend, so, well, but pretty happy with how it came out. A little inconsistencies, went heavy in some spots, a little dry in others, but I'll probably put another coat on here tomorrow and see what happens. But either way, it turned out pretty damn good. And huge improvement over multicolored primer spots, all that stuff. So can't really tell, but because the texture's so rough, but there is a pretty good metallic in there. Yeah, texture's too rough to see, but yeah, came out pretty good. And then step back, there we go. Damn. Actually looks pretty good on here. Matches pretty close. It's a little lighter than I was expecting, but that bedliner is kind of like a clear white base, so it does mess with that the final color. But I mean, most of it's going to be covered up anyway. You'll never see any of the firewall. You'll see maybe the top of the strut towers a little bit, but for the most part it's going to be mostly hidden. And then got to come back, spray black in here. I thought I had a whole case of black, but it was white instead, so can't spray that. But yeah, looking pretty good. Next, just got to yeah, spray the wheel wells, and shoot, that's about it. Thing will be ready to go back together. That's a wrap on the color match engine bay. Feels really good to be knocking stuff off the list. This thing's getting real close to being done. About to throw everything back together again. Next up, just got to throw the engine in, do a little bit of exhaust work first. Might drop the transmission, throw a torque converter in there. You know, I got it on the bench, might as well. And then after that, suspension going back in, and then it's back on the ground. I may, after that, I think it's done on the lift. I'll try to roll it inside, and then I could jump on wiring. But I'm gonna let y'all go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking, subscribing. See you in the next one.